Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Robert Schmid, also known as Mr.IoT. I am Deloitte's Chief IoT Technologist with a deep passion of digital. This week on Coffee with Mr.IoT, I have a lot of different guests. It's the show with the most guests ever, so it's awesome. And we'll just, hi everyone, thank you for joining. And the topic of the day today is I want to give you guys a back view of LiveWorx. We all were at the IoT conference last week in Boston, hosted by PTC. Probably were over 6,000 people, and all of you guys had a big part of making this happen. And so I wanted you guys to be on there, not just to thank you publicly, but also to give people a chance to look behind the scenes and meet the amazing Deloitte team that made that all happen. So, Mahesh, you're sitting next to me. We are together at a client, actually. Welcome. What was your role last week, and what was your favorite moment of the week?
The favorite moment of
the week. You can't take the owl, by the way. You cannot.
Yes.
You have to do something else. That's mine.
I think the favorite moment for me was one of the client looked at our turnkey IoT solution, and then he went through the journey, and then puts the HoloLens, and he was like blown away. He was like, wow. So it was like, this is going to change and disrupt maintenance and field service. So he was like, his reactions was like worthy to watch. I forgot a video his reactions, but I think that was one of the moments I felt like, okay, like it's number one is he said like it very well relates to what he's trying to do. Two is this is the way the technology is going to help in terms of the connected factory space. And he was super thrilled, and he wants to connect with us to work on things which he puts in his work on.
So Mahesh, thank you. That's awesome. I'm glad you were a big part of making turnkey IoT happen. But what was your role last week? Tell people which part you were responsible for.
So I was responsible for overall in terms of the booth, handling customers coming into the booth and understanding what we talk about. Number one is what we do in Deloitte Digital around IoT, what type of work we do, and then also showcase the two accelerators we have. One was the Retail 360, which is basically the convergence of customer and store. So we talked about real-time inventory using single item RFID, and then we had a small mark store within the booth. And then the second thing is the turnkey solution, and the third thing is extending the turnkey solution into the element. So that's pretty much the overall responsibility to make sure that the client understands what we're trying to do, and then also showcase what we're doing.
I say you always make me look smart because you're sort of like the brains behind when I go somewhere, so thank you for that. It's great to having you there, and doing a good job on that. Let's keep going around the horn here. Val, welcome to the show. It's the first time for you, right?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm Val Cohen. I'm out of the New York office. And my favorite thing about LiveWorx, actually Mahesh took mine. It was actually the same couple minutes that I was going to talk about was, with the client and showing them our demo and everything working. That was just really exciting. But to diversify a little bit, so our solution involved working with an entire consortium. So working with people from National Instruments, PTC, and HPE. And one of my favorite parts of the conference was finally meeting in person some of those people that we've had really long conference calls with, and finally getting to see them in person and actually get to know them in a different setting and building those relationships that go behind the technology and going behind the solution building. So for me, that was a really important part, and really great to meet a lot of those people and reconnect with some of the ones that I've already met in other contexts. So it was nice to have all of them nearby in case anything was going wrong with our solution, and to be able to say, what do you think would be better for a next part or things like that. So that was probably my favorite part of the conference.
Well, I have to say, I came by the booth in between here and there. The one thing I noticed is not only did you give great demos on the HoloLens, for the people who don't know, we introduced a new solution called Turnkey IoT for manufacturing, which is showcased on our booth with a motor, and we had a HoloLens portion to that, and you were demoing this. Every time I got there, I saw you stand there. But the thing that impressed me the most is you had a big smile on your face every time I saw you too for 3 days. How do you do that? I can't be that happy and that sort of like, into it all the time. I need time off, but you were like on.
Yeah, well, there were behind the scenes moments where I would wipe the smile off, but for the most part, I mean, it was really fun to give the demo. People really enjoyed it, and I think it was cool to see how much they were enjoying it, especially with the HoloLens. That's such innovative new technology, even for myself. So even just giving that demo and seeing the reactions that people had, especially one of the directions was showing them how to take screws out, and they would always just go and be so excited. So it's hard not to smile as a reaction to that and know that your team and a couple other people from within Deloitte helped to create that.
Well, I have to tell you, your energy and your enthusiasm was infectious, and thank you for that. It was great to see that, so thank you. Chris, I'm going to have to unmute you again. Hang on. Are you still on mute, Chris? Yeah. So maybe you can unmute yourself. Chris, welcome to the show. I think this is your first time too. Let's see, we're having problems here with Chris. Let's go to Chaz then. Chaz, how are you doing? You had a big role in all this. You and I travel together a lot. It's good to have you on the show. You're actually always behind the scenes on the show, so it's great to bring you once in a while in front of the camera rather than behind the camera. Tell us, what was your role last week, and what was your favorite moment?
Well, good morning, good afternoon. My role, well, I'm sort of a all-purpose producer, writer, marketing guy. I'm not really a technologist at all, and so my role has more to do with making sure the slides look right and making sure that the things that are supposed to happen in presentations happen, and really to walk around and learn. And I have to say, my personal, probably my most interesting moment was watching the first keynote on Tuesday morning. Jim Heppelman did a whole thing. I mean, it was a thing. PTC. They brought a guy with lasers, and did this amazing laser show, and then he really kind of showed off what PTC does in an hour and a half of like these little vignettes and things that I just thought it was an amazing production that he did. It was really quite extraordinary, with robots and lights, and people, and and great demos of what the product does. So I think that's the thing that had me go wow most. I would have been more wowed by your presentation, but I was intimately involved in every aspect of your presentation, so the surprise factor was gone. And we'll talk about your presentation shortly. The other thing is that Deloitte made an incredible video for this turnkey IoT solution that also was just really nice to see it actually run in front of people and see how people reacted to it and see that it did what we intended it to do. So it's always good to see your work actually working. So those were sort of the high points for me. And then it's always fun to just travel around with you, Robert, and see what you see. So
thank you. Well, it's good to have. It was great to have you there, and I have to say, without you, there wouldn't have been an owl.
Yeah, it's true.
That's sort of for the people who didn't see it, but the turnkey IoT is an edge solution. And the way we illustrated this in the video was an owl sitting in the forest on the tree looking down on the forest floor and observing what goes on. And this was symbolic for the box that we introduced to be the owl. And so at the end of the presentation, we showed the video, and then at the end of my keynote, we had a real owl, but this big, fly in from the side and land next to me. So that's Big Mama, and so we talked about it. Chris, it looks like you're off mute. I'm so happy. Let's see if we can hear you. What was your role? What was your favorite moment of last week? This has been a big, big thing for you.
Jeez, where do I start? Well, first of all, a quick introduction. Chris Albrecht. I work for Robert in the IoT practice as the PTC Alliance Manager. So over the last, I'd say 3 months, LiveWorx was a huge part of my day and week and just everyday thought process. So I think the best part about LiveWorx was very similar to what Val said earlier. And Robert, you always say that it takes a family to do IoT. Well, I think it takes a family to pull off a major presence at a conference. So, you know, just all the different teams come together on the Deloitte side, on the PTC side, on the consortium side to ultimately, you know, get us to, you know, Monday evening when we kicked off and then just, you know, pull off a great conference. So that was my favorite part, just seeing everyone come together and work as a family.
I have to tell you, you made it easy for me to relax because everything was so pulled together. I almost sometimes felt you were so having pulled stuff together. I wanted to pull you out so you could enjoy it more, but I'm glad you did. So it's good to hear. By the way, if you're joining late, you're watching Coffee with Mr. IoT. Today we're talking about behind the scenes of LiveWorx, the IoT conference we all were last week, and you get to meet the team that made it all happen. Let's talk about the hiccups or the fun stuff that happened. And by the way, feel free to ask me questions too. But Val, you talked about HoloLens, and I know you came up to me and said even after the first day, the HoloLens actually broke. And not only did it break, but actually one of the Deloitte partners broke it. What happened?
So the HoloLens broke. It was mostly the plastic. So it had no effect on the actual HoloLens itself, but I think it probably brought the value down if we ever decide to sell it. I can't see us doing that anytime soon, given how much of a crowd it brought into our booth. But that was probably number like 10 on the top 3 list of crises that happened over the conference. But everything was manageable and everything worked out okay.
Funny moment of last week?
Funny moment.
Well, fun moment. It's a language thing, by the way. I always mix up fun and funny. They sort of seem the same, and I know they're not. But you can pick either one.
I'm going to do fun. I think one of the really fun things was, I think it was Tuesday into the conference. We invited a bunch of clients over to see a magician and a mind reader. And the magic stuff was cool. They did all this stuff with rubber bands where somehow, I guess, material dissolved. I don't really know what was happening, but the mind reader was so cool. The girl guessed digits she guessed the serial number of a dollar bill just by telling someone to think it. So that was pretty cool. That was a pretty interesting night of entertainment and really nice to spend some time with some of the folks from PTC and some of the other clients that we invited. So really enjoyed that as well.
Chris?
So hiccup and then fun moments. So I had a personal hiccup when I landed on Sunday night at about midnight. I didn't have my own luggage. I had my identical bag, but I opened my bag and it was someone else's luggage. So I had a gentleman gracious enough to drive down from New Hampshire to Boston, and we did a bag exchange, and it actually didn't end up being a big deal at all. So that was a hiccup for me personally. But as far as fun moment goes,
let me get this straight. There was someone who had the same luggage. You happened to take the other person's luggage, and then in that morning, the person came to give you your luggage back. Didn't you tell me that person drove for 2 hours to even do that?
Yeah, literally. So we were sitting, he was a row in front of me on the Southwest flight, and we had the identical bag, and neither of us had our bags tagged, or it was so late at night we didn't realize. And he took mine and I took his. I emailed him about 1 a.m. He gets home to New Hampshire, texts me at 3 a.m. I wake up at 6 and text him, and he's gracious enough to drive down from New Hampshire to Boston and to do a bag exchange. So
there's some good in the world still. It's nice to hear.
Yeah, it was. I didn't know what I was going to do, but it worked out, I suppose. As far as fun goes, I think I'm not sure who all was able to visit. PTC had an escape room that they custom built for LiveWorx, and their software engineers basically created like an escape from Mars, where you had to monitor an IoT, ThingWorx dashboard for system failure and then perform fixes, and then it would automatically update with real-time data, and you had to answer a number of questions and get out of this escape room to safely exit Mars, which was, I thought, really, really cool. I did that with Janet Chang and Ryan Manis from Deloitte.
I missed that. We didn't go there.
That was cool.
Good. Mahesh?
Yeah.
That was cool.
So I would not say hiccup. So I was just like, my heart was beating. We were shipping for that big motor in a Pelican case from Denver to Boston. I was like, chill. I called Val. Once she picks up the package, please give me a call. I want to make sure that it comes in one piece. Because we never did that, and if something goes wrong on that, we can't even demo it. I was like, my heart was beating, because we were trying to do a free shipment, and we had a big box, it's everything, but it was so impossible to move because the machine was 50 pounds, and the package, the hard case was 50 pounds. So we somehow, thanks to another person, which is York, who was a critical member too, he had this idea to take out the Pelican case and then had the paddings in the right way to send it, and we got it in one piece. So, in terms of the fun factor, oh yeah, they had this motorcycle, which with all the sensors there. I don't know whether you guys have seen it. So I was trying to hop onto the motorcycle, and then there's this big guy, Texan guy, probably. So he was right next to me. Are you planning to ride this motorcycle? I was like a miniature version of that, sitting on the motorcycle, not even able to leave my leg onto it. And then I was trying to get this huge motorcycle on top of it to see the sensors and other stuff. It was hilarious. People around me are just like thinking, like, "Oh, are you going to drive it?" I said, "Like, I can drive it." So that was like a really funny moment. And then this guy comes and hops onto it, and he just looks at it. It's like it's got everything right there, and I couldn't even reach it because the motorcycle, the handlebar was like right here. So it was like I could barely reach it. It was like really funny because everybody around me was like laughing like crazy when I sat on that. I don't know if you guys have looked at the motorcycle or not.
I did not. Did you guys look at the motorcycle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It almost feels like we all did different things. There was so much to see. We got to see different things. Jazz?
Okay.
Pick up a fun moment and or funny?
It's both. It's time to talk about owls. It's time. So there's an owl in the video, and somebody, not me, has this brilliant idea. What if Robert shows the video at the beginning, and then at the end has an owl fly in?
It's Chris's idea.
And so there you go. So now the question becomes, where does one find an owl, and how does one bring an owl to a IoT exhibition? So I had to find an owl wrangler. That took some doing, but I did find an owl. I did find an owl that was within a drive of Boston. Yeah, but I found an owl from people who don't actually really communicate. So I didn't really know until like the night before whether or not the owl would actually make it there. And then when the owl made it there, the owl handler couldn't check into her room, and it was just all this like constant churn. And then she shows up on the morning of the presentation, and she was just sweet as pie and really nice and really cooperative. And I thought the hiccup part of it was all just trying to get the owl there, but also the fun part of it, the owl was very cooperative. She was very cooperative, and allowed Robert to put on a gauntlet and have that owl just stand on Robert's arm for a bit, and the owl seemed to like Robert, and Robert seemed to like the owl, and all that was actually very cool. It was very cool to just watch that whole thing unfold and work, and have both have the impact, but also just the coolness of being near it's a European owl. It's the largest species. It's the largest variety of owl that exists on the planet. It's a big bird. It's like the size of an eagle. It's a big bird. And just watching that bird, just stand on Robert's arm and look at Robert, and look around the room, and just being around it, being near it. It was very cool. It was very cool for everybody. Every stage hand wanted to come help Robert in that moment. All the PTC people and all the convention people who were involved with putting on the show all wanted to be in the room and wanted to be around the owl. It was all very cool. So props to Lori Schumacher and her trained owl, Big Mama, and it was a very cool thing. I'm curious for you. I know a lot about you. We're friends. We know each other a long time. Kind of the first time I ever saw you with an owl on your arm. Tell me about your experience of all that. How was that for you, Robert?
Well, I loved the idea, and I really wanted the owl to land on my arm. There was sort of like this picture: the owl flies and lands on my arm, and then obviously we went to our risk guys, and they said, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. So we got off of that. And so when the owl landed, I have to say, I met the owl my keynote was at 8, right? And I met the owl at 7 when Laurie showed up. And I really felt the most. I mean, this was one of those moments in work life that you only have here and there, right? It was definitely one of my highlights to meet an owl like this and get to sort of practice. There was this effort of Laurie came, and then she put the table there, so the way it was set up, and she put a piece of meat on there, and then she caught the owl to fly from the side of the table, and it didn't work the first time, and then she did it again, and then it landed there, and then she put it on my arm. But it's intimidating, right? There's this big bird on your arm. It was just really, really cool. It was one of those things that sticks with me. I really had a big thing there. I wanted to continuously scratch the owl and kind of touch it, but I didn't quite dare because the beak was like huge. The talons were even bigger. So I was like, okay, my finger, I hope the owl doesn't confuse my finger with the piece of meat that the owl just ate. So I didn't do that. So I stood there, like slightly shaking with the owl, but continuously wanting to scratch it. And then when Mario came over, I had the owl on my left arm, actually, right? And so we had this agreed that this was going to be because the glove was was a left-hand glove. And so we had agreed that Mario comes on my right side so that he's not the owl isn't between us. But he ended up not liking this, so he was on the left side, and continuously when the owl turned, I was like, okay, is the owl going to do something now? Because Mario had not met the owl before. So Mario's the MC, by the way. So, that's what went down for me with the owl. But I have to say, I got more out of the owl in the prep than during the actual presentation, because the presentation itself, there's so much going on. There's so much stuff that goes through my head that this was more like the practice was much more impactful on me and connecting with the owl. So it was really, really amazing. And I really, thank you, Deloitte, for being flexible with us on this and letting us do these really great things. And one of the things I love about Deloitte, that diversity and different ideas are there and can be done. So it's great that way. It's interesting, by the way, we're going to run out here. So let's just go back and say, anybody has any questions for anybody else? We're about to wrap this up. So Chris, thank you for everything you did. Anything you want to ask or say before we close?
Bigger and better next year.
What is that going to be?
Elephant.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was thinking about having Robert ride in.
We have a
Okay. Well, thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Thanks for being on. Val?
One quick thing, Mahesh, I don't know if you actually knew about this, but Monday morning when I got to the conference, I checked to see the shipping information about the motor. And when I looked at it, it said arrival date of Tuesday. And I started panicking. I call UPS and, trying to be calm, but also forceful, but also diplomatic, but also aggressive to try to make sure we get this package. Turns out someone just hadn't scanned it onto the truck. So finally, after an hour of waiting and, you know, back and forth calls with UPS, I find out that it's in Boston on the truck. But there was an hour where I was like, we're not going to have a demo. Like, so I don't know if I ever told you that, but that was not a fun hour.
No, I'm hearing for the first time.
Well, it all showed up, and you did a great job, Val. You keep the smile going. It really got everybody very engaged and very participative there. Thank you for everything. Jazz, any closing thoughts before Mahesh and I close it up here?
Well, I just want to say about IoT in general. It was actually, for me, you know, I'm the least technological of all of you. And for me, just walking around and watching, looking at IoT-enabled tools, looking at IoT-enabled, all the different ways to do AR or VR, the work helmets and the glasses, looking at just sort of the breadth of all the different places on the edge that there's going to be machine learning and ways to collect data. It's pretty interesting. I feel like we were walking around at the beginning of a wave that's just going to wash over everything, and it is very fascinating to see IoT ideas in almost every aspect of life. It's very cool. It's going to have a lot of human impact, a lot of business impact, and it's very cool to be around it.
Well, I have to say, you, Aaron, Janet, you guys had a huge social impact too. You got everything out there. I saw there were about 20,000 Twitter impressions alone on the stuff you did out there, Deloitte and everything. So thanks for that. I appreciate it. Mahesh, any closing thoughts?
Closing thoughts is we need to release 5 more offerings next year.
5 more offerings, okay.
Yeah.
You do know that this is now you're putting it on yourself. Half of that, right? Okay, well, good. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. Please join us again next week at Coffee with Mr. IoT, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. And if you missed any part of the show, come back on my YouTube channel. You can rewatch this show episode or any previous episodes. With that, happy Friday, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.